What's up, guys? Spin Firearms here, and a big, massive area of firearms, conversations about firearms, and so on is, what is the recoil like? What is the muzzle flip like? Is it snappy? Is it hard to shoot? And so on. And so I just thought I'd make a video pointing out to you some of my collection's best shooters. And by best shooters, I don't mean it has the best trigger. I don't mean it has the best ergonomics. I mean it has the best recoil handling for its size. For instance, a CSX is going to have recoil different than an XD. So they're two different, you can't really compare them because they're different sizes and weights, but for their class is what I'm going to be discussing. For instance, the CSX compared to other Micro 9s, or the Hellcat Pro compared to other compacts or XL versions like the SIGs and stuff. So let's get into it, but before we get started, drop a comment, hit the like button, tell me what you carry today, do something for the algorithms, help me out. It's like a free donation. It means a lot to me. So first off, where we're going to start off is the CSX. Not just compared to other Micro 9s in this case, but this thing is extremely small and it handles recoil like nothing else. I don't know how they designed it that well. I don't know if it's how high your hand is sitting relative to that low bore axis, or just the guide rod, or what, but the CSX recoil is so minimal. I have a video up on YouTube of me mag dumping 12+1 of this little compact Micro 9 in less than 2.5 seconds and accurately. This thing's an absolute beast. I know people talk about the double reset or whatever the case may be, the false reset. Guys, you don't really have to shoot the reset with this. The trigger is so short, absolutely handles recoil like a beast. Next up is going to be a firearm you may or may not have seen, but this is when Ruger was putting out top-notch quality polymer handguns. It's similar to SIG. SIG nowadays does not put out their best polymer handguns, just like Ruger. But the Ruger SR9C, similar in size to a Glock 26 or an M&P 2.0 subcompact, this thing handles recoil like a tank, like an absolute champ. Yes, I'm not a big fan of the sights, and it is a thick boy, but this thing handles recoil so well. And the number one thing I like about it is, other than the ergonomics, is how easy it is to conceal. It's like my Glock 26s. They have such a short grip and frame that you can literally conceal it basically anywhere, even when it is this thick. And this setup right here is a 10+1. Unfortunately, they only make them with manual safeties, but the recoil from this thing is basically nothing. And it reminds me of older cars, right? They just don't make them like they used to. Next up is something I've had many people agree, law enforcement or even non-law enforcement. This firearm right here was a law enforcement trade-in. And I always tell the story, there was like tons of them at the place I was at. I'm like, where the heck did people get all these M&Ps and just sell them? And then I asked them, they're like, yes, these were backups for some law enforcement officers in the state I live in. I'm like, yeah, that's actually really cool. I like stainless steel. And they said, actually, the stainless steel was only made for the law enforcement. So I was actually pretty, I was pretty curious or interested in that. That was pretty cool. Anyways, it is a 40. As we all know, majority of police officers carried a 40 for a long time until they couldn't meet their qualification tests and other stuff like that. And now people use it to justify why they don't carry 40. It is what it is. But anyways, this right here is like shooting a 9mm. I kid you not. I've had other people agree in the comments. I've talked to so many people that own this firearm or bought this firearm used, which I got this used for under $300. This shoots like a 9mm. So for anyone who wants a 40 Smith & Wesson round, but have very little recoil, this is the answer. This is a better shooter than the Glock 27, hands down. Better than the XD40 subcompact, hands down. And it's super ergonomic. They have barrel conversion kits if you ever want to convert it back to 9mm or 357 SIG. It's a very versatile firearm. They have larger magazines for it. Absolutely love this thing. This is a gem in my collection. And to be honest, I don't carry it the most. I'm going to start carrying it more this fall and this winter. But to be honest, this is one of my favorite carries when you combine it with Civil Liberty defense rounds, simply because it's just so fun to shoot that you get really good with it. And I'm really passionate about firearms, so when I really, really like something, I don't care what people say. If they're like, oh, why are you carrying an outdated Smith & Wesson M&P 40C? It's because I love to shoot it. It's just that simple. Next up, I got to give to my Glock 26. This is a great firearm for people to shoot. Very easy to shoot. Very little recoil. Has much less recoil than the Glock 43X. It doesn't fit everyone's hands perfectly, but overall, it is a great smooth shooter, and that's one of the reasons I fell in love with the Glock 26 in the first place, is because I could shoot it so well because the recoil is so minimal, and it has much less muzzle flip than a 19, a 17, and 19X, but at the same time, that recoil is so manageable. Fell in love with the Glock 26. For other Micro 9s, this having the X grip, the SIG P365 variants, even though I'm not the biggest fan of SIG, they do shoot some of the least amount of recoil out of any of the other Micro 9s. Especially with how light they are, how small they are. Even with the regular grip, the recoil is much less than the majority of these other Micro 9s out there. Now, compared to the CSX has less recoil. But after that, I think the P365 has the least amount of recoil out of any Micro 9. Absolutely gotta love it. Now, when it comes to firearms that are subcompacts, this is the easiest, flattest, smoothing shooting pistol out there. This is the Glock 28 chamber in 380. If you get a good one that is reliable and you test it, you can dump 10+1 in 2 seconds, no problem. This thing is so easy to shoot, so fast to shoot, and that's what actually makes it such a great self-defense firearm. Because, yes, it's 380, but once again, you have a 3.5-inch barrel. This is not your 3-inch, 2.75-inch barrel on a Ruger, LCP, or stuff like that. This is a 3.5-inch barrel. You put some extreme Defender rounds in there from Underwood or some Underwood hollow points, you're golden. If you 11+1 out of here in less than 2 seconds, that is honestly usually how self-defense encounters go. It's going to be quick, and you're going to be letting them rounds go. And this is a great option. I absolutely love the Glock 28. Haven't shot it the most, but from the times I've shot it, it's an absolute blast. Absolute blast. Now, the best shooting compact, in my opinion, goes to the Springfield Armory XDM Elite. I love this thing. I love taking it to the range. I think it's very ergonomic. There are some things I would change to make it more carryable, but at the same time, I'm not angry because the 10mm version of this is an absolute beautiful firearm from what I've been told. On top of that, they have the 35-round magazine for this, and it handles recoil like it's nothing. Literally, it's like shooting a 22 or a 380. I mean, this thing just handles recoil like a beast. Absolutely love it. As far as single stacks go, the CZ-P10M. There is no recoil with this firearm. And I know people don't like it because of the trigger or whatever, but for $229 that these were going for at one point, the recoil is so minimal, 7+1 with very little recoil. Tell me you can't get out of a self-defense encounter with that, especially with a backup mag. The thing is just a shooter. Yes, it doesn't have the best trigger, but this is an everyday carry self-defense firearm. This isn't a competition pistol. This is something that was designed to be pocket carried and have a heavier trigger acting as a safety. But once you put 250, 300, 400, 500 rounds through this thing, that trigger gets really loosened up and actually turns into quite an amazing trigger. Next up, I'm going to have to go with a firearm, the Masada Slim. Now, once again, I don't know where this compares. It's somewhere between a Micro 9 and a Hellcat Pro and a 43X. But this thing handles recoil really well. And once again, it is that off-balanced firearm feel to it where the slide is heavy, sort of like my XD. The slide is heavy, but the frame feels really light. So you feel off balance. You're like, oh, this is weird. But then you load that mag up and everything's balanced again. Then you start shooting and you realize, yes, it feels awkward and not balanced, but all that weight up there is helping your recoil. And I think IWI knocked it out of the park when it comes to handling recoil with a firearm like this. And if this is your CCW, 13+1 in a setup like this, with a trigger like this, with recoil control like this, I mean, what more can you ask for? A great option, and for a great price. Absolutely love it. Then also, we got to go Hellcat Pro. From the original Hellcat, I can't be lying to you guys. The original Hellcat's a little bit snappy. I got to be honest about that. Even though it's one of my favorite firearms, it's a little bit snappy. The Hellcat Pro is not. The Hellcat Pro is not snappy at all. And one thing that really surprised me with the Hellcat Pro, I don't know if I'm so used to just shooting Hellcats with the 15-round mag, so I'm used to the grip and everything, but what I noticed is the muzzle flip for the longer barrel, there is none. There barely is anything. I think this is one of the most complete handguns right out of the box that everyone should get. It's a big improvement from the original Hellcat when it comes to snappiness and recoil and controllability and stuff like that. But this thing, now that it has a 17 round mag, everyone should be getting a Springfield Armory Hellcat Pro. And last but not least, this may be a firearm you guys didn't know that I absolutely love and cherish. And this is my Springfield Armory XD9 Subcompact. This is actually my first subcompact that I had. This is one of my first carry firearms, and I loved it because it had all these great features to it. But when I did pick it up, I always felt weird. I'm like, this is blocky, it's heavy, it's chunky, and then I took it to the range, and I'm like, this thing shoots like an absolute dream. And what I noticed is, out of every single handgun I own, doesn't matter what caliber, could be 380, 22, whatever, I shoot this the best one-handed. Better than my TX22 one-handed, better than, my Smith & Wesson EZ380 one-handed. My XD9 Subcompact, one-handed, I'm an absolute animal with, an absolute beast with. Also, off-handed. I can shoot off-handed really well with this, one-handed. And I have put a lot of rounds through it. I'm on my second barrel with this Springfield Armory. But once again, great shooter. I don't know why people talk down on Springfield Armory. And when you're a new shooter, the grip safety just definitely helps you with the mindset of carrying with the round in the chamber. The striker indicator, trigger safety. You literally have all these built-in safeties to make you feel comfortable as a new shooter. And on top of that, you get to the range and you let one shot go and you're like, oh my goodness, I love this thing. So I might even put this thing back in my carry rotation because I forgot how much I absolutely love this to shoot this thing. And when you love to shoot something, you tend to carry it. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching.